Okay, well, let us begin the service. Tēnā koutou te whānau o Auckland Unitarians. Tēnā koutou nā manahiri, no mai, haere mai ki tēnei hui, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Welcome to this morning, this day, and this opportunity to be together in community, which is a time of joy, comfort, and sometimes challenges. This virtual congregation is a place where we come to learn more about being human. We're not here because we've figured out life's questions or because we think we've got it right. We come here to learn more about being in relationship together, how to listen, how to forgive, how to be vulnerable, and how to create trust and compassion in one another. Let us move into worship, willing to be authentic with each other, honest within ourselves, and open to connection in all its forms. Now, if you have your chalice or a candle, let us light our virtual chalice. With humility and courage born in our history, we are, as Unitarian Universalists, to build the beloved community where all souls are welcome as blessings and the human family lives whole and reconciled. With this vision in our hearts and minds, we light our chalice. It's been quite a week out in the world with all of the response to the murder of George Floyd. What's particularly phenomenal to me is having grown up in the civil rights era and watching a lot of the battles for voting rights and to end segregation in the US, watching it all on TV live, black and white, a fuzzy picture, no HD TV in those days, but it was still incredibly painful to watch people being attacked with police dogs or hosed down with fire hoses and all of that. But it didn't catch on even throughout the US at that time. Granted, there were a lot fewer people there then, but to see it trigger the reaction around the world is what I want to focus on today. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves that a picture's worth 1,000 words. So the story today is just pictures. And it's called I Walk with Vanessa. And I think you can kind of figure it out as we go along. What I was drawn to in this story was it's really what's happening around the world, which will happen again today in Auckland at 1 o'clock. I think there's also one in Wellington, where we're going to walk with those who suffer from racism and the power of just being there is. So I invite you to all walk with Vanessa, not just today, but in the many days ahead that are going to be required to have some impact on them. Okay. That's the feel-good part of this morning. So enjoy it, savor it. I want you to now, for my opening words, watch a video called, it's a poem by Gabriel Ramirez entitled White Privilege. And as you watch it, I want you to pay attention to the feelings it engenders within you. In particular, how uncomfortable is it? For one of the things required for things to change is our own discomfort. For my random musings, I've entitled it Racism, a Tree in the Forest. If a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? It's a philosophical question raised first by philosopher George Berkeley in 1710. He offered no answer. In 1863, the question was raised again in a magazine called the Chautauquan. Their answer was no. Sound is the sensation excited in the ear when the air or other medium is set in motion. Their scientific view is supported by Scientific American in 1884. Sound is vibration transmitted to our senses through the mechanism of the ear and recognized as sound only at our nerve centers. The falling of the tree or any other disturbance will produce vibration of the air. If there be no ears to hear, there will be no sound, they conclude. Albert Einstein is reported to have asked his fellow physicist and friend, Niels Bohr, whether he realistically believed that the moon does not exist if nobody is looking at it. To this, Bohr replied that however hard Einstein may try, he would not be able to prove that it does, thus giving the entire riddle of the forest and the tree the status of a kind of infallible conjecture, one that cannot be either proved or disproved. This riddle from my first philosophy paper at university came to mind as I have read about and watched the multitudes, not only in the US, but around the world, even here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, marching in the streets, protesting racism. It both makes my heart glad to see a long overdue recognition that racism oppresses untold millions everywhere, and depresses me that at my age, I'm still protesting against something that happens mostly in ways people of privilege like myself can't hear, can't see, can't experience. Donald Trump recently whinged that if they weren't testing for it, COVID numbers wouldn't be so horrific. It's a little like a person who doesn't take a pregnancy test so they won't get pregnant. But this logic, if a culture infused with systemic racism does not question its existence, it does not exist unless you are Black. It can be argued that certainly in the age of Trump, racism is not a lonely tree in the forest. The world was horrified by the death of George Floyd at the hands of police. Clearly, the cause of death was being Black, and he was only the last of a long list of others who have recently died at the hands of police, few of whom have been held accountable. Yet, This is only the tip of the iceberg of racism. We who are privileged not to be Black can see. If we don't think we're privileged by our skin color, how many of us wish we were Black? And of course, why would we? If Black, we would be more likely to be incarcerated, unemployed, and living below the poverty line in substandard housing. Our children would more likely go to poorly resourced schools. We would be more subject to abuse and hate crimes. We would be more likely to experience violence. We would more likely suffer from anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, and high blood pressure, putting our physical and mental health at risk. We would have greater difficulty getting loans and mortgages, and when we did, we would pay more for them, especially if our last resort is credit cards or predatory lenders. Lastly, and most humiliatingly, we would be blamed and denigrated by the system for the consequences we endure because of our skin color. Our cries of protest would go unheard. We didn't enslave ourselves. We didn't invite Europeans to colonize us. We didn't write the laws that disadvantage us. We didn't create an economic system that thrives at our expense. And when our protests become too loud, we don't silence ourselves with riot police. This Black experience is the tree in the forest. Can we hear it? Can we see it? Can we feel it? Perhaps because of the worldwide protests, more people are interested in understanding racism. The first thing they learn is that racism comes in different forms, but all of its forms are rooted in preserving privilege and power for one group of people over all others based on their race. We have a name for it: white supremacy. Stokely Carmichael, if you're old enough, who was a Black power advocate back in the 60s, gives a vivid explanation of two forms of racism. Racism is both overt and covert. It takes two closely related forms, individual whites acting against individual Blacks, and acts by the total white community against the Black community. We call these individuals racism and institutional racism. The first consists of overt acts by individuals which cause death, injury, or the violent destruction of property. This type can be recorded by cameras. It can frequently be observed in the process of commission. The second type is less overt, far more subtle, less identifiable in terms of specific individuals committing acts, but it is no less destructive of human life. The second type originates in the operation of established and respected forces in the society, and thus receives far less public condemnation than the first type. When white terrorists bomb a Black church and kill 5 children, that is an act of individual racism, widely deplored by most segments of society. But when in that same city, Birmingham, Alabama, 500 Black babies die each year because of lack of proper food, shelter, and medical facilities, and thousands more are destroyed and maimed physically, emotionally, and intellectually because of conditions of poverty and discrimination in the Black community. That is a function of institutional racism. That's the end of this quote. There is another form of racism that supports these. It is sometimes referred to as casual racism. This racism is in the deepest part of the forest. Casual racism involves negative stereotypes or prejudices about people on the basis of race, color, or ethnicity. Examples include jokes, offhanded comments, and exclusion of people from social situations on the basis of race. Some associate racism with a belief in racial superiority or deliberate acts of discrimination. Casual racism concerns not so much a conscious belief in the superiority of races, but negative prejudice or stereotypes concerning race. Unlike overt and intentional acts of racism, casual racism isn't often intended to cause offense or harm. It might be called polite racism. In the mind of the perpetrator, it is polite enough to give them the deniability to the claim they are a racist. Yet this seemingly benign form of racism protects that tree in the forest from being cut down. Clearly, ending racism begins with us. Okay, we'll go into breakout questions. I hope I inspired a lively conversation. And the question to think about is, can you hear, see, feel that racist tree in the Aotearoa, New Zealand bush? So, Paul, I'll ask you to put us in breakout groups, and we have about 15 minutes. Okay. Well, I know in our group we were in mid comments. We had no trouble to talk about it. So I hope you all have an interesting conversation. I would only comment that clearly it's an issue of how we deal with it has to deal with our own discomfort. And it's human nature not to want to be uncomfortable. And yet, if we're going to get past this, we need to live into our discomfort, own it, not run away from it, try to understand it. Well, those of you who had lit a candle, it's time to extinguish it. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. For my closing words, I want to begin, but not end with, a small portion of a TED Talk given by an Australian Aborigine, Jonathan Sri, about Australia's Great White Silence. I encourage you maybe to go and watch the whole thing. His last name is S-R-I, or you could put Australia's Great White Silence into YouTube and get the whole thing. And with these final words, within each of our hearts, there is a most glorious light. Go forth and let its spark help you understand what troubles both you and others. Go forth and let it light, its light of reason be a guide in your decisions. Go forth and bring its ray of hope to those in need of help in both body and spirit, that they may find healing. Go forth and fan the flames of passion to help heal the world. Go forth and spread the warm glow of love, pushing back the darkness of the world. Go forth and share your glorious light with the world.